Hello, everyone. This is Chris Kalinich. We are going to be starting shortly. I'm going to let some participants kind of trickle in over the next minute or so, and we will get started shortly. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my kitchen, also known as the Plant to Platter Kitchen. My name is Chris Kalinich, and I am a culinary instructor and nutrition educator based out of beautiful Sedona, Arizona. And I want to welcome you into my home today. Thank you for joining me. I do want to let you know that this is the second class in a three-part series in honor of Earth Month, and it's called Kids in the Kitchen. And I am super excited for this topic today. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I do want to just go over a couple items of business, though. If you are new to kind of a Zoom webinar format, this is where the way that you will kind of talk with me is actually through what's called a Q&A feature. There is also a chat feature, but I'm going to really be paying attention more to the Q&A feature. And that, if you're on a desktop, is kind of right down somewhere in the middle there of your screen. And as I'm going through giving information and doing the demonstration, you can put in questions there, and towards maybe the middle and also at the very end, I'll be addressing those questions. So please know that no question is too silly. If you have the question, then someone else probably does too, and that's how we learn from each other. The other item I want to talk about is that about within 24 hours after this class, you will be receiving a follow-up email from me. And that will include the recipes from today. We're going to be covering 2 recipes that are fun and yummy. And there'll also be some other links in there, some other resources that I think will be valuable for you. So be checking for your email tomorrow afternoon around this time. The other thing I want to talk about is that this is a 45-minute, what I call a bite-sized class. And so we're going to be covering a lot of information. But if you think of something after the fact too, you are welcome to email me, and my email address will be in that follow-up email. So why don't we go ahead and get started? It'll just take me a minute since I'm not super tech savvy. I do want to bring up this picture again and kind of just go over, we talked about a little bit about the class and how it's formatted, but I want to introduce you to my family. Actually, on this webinar, I have my oldest daughter, Megan. She's here, right here, and my youngest daughter, Corinne. And they are have helped me make me the cook that I am today. When they were this age, I wasn't very much of a, first of all, I wasn't a very good cook to begin with. I learned as they grew, and I became a healthier cook by about the time they were this age. And so now they are this age, they are grown-up adults, but they're also going to be able to help answer questions for you throughout this, during this webinar as well, coming from the kids' perspective. Now, I recognize that I am talking to a wide, diverse audience here today. Not only are you from around the United States, a lot of you are within Arizona, but I have people that registered from California to Florida, so welcome. But I'm also talking to people of various ages. I have been told through people registering, they have people that have kids that are like preschool age, so maybe 3 or 4, all the way through middle school and high school. But we also have parents and grandparents here in attendance. So this is a huge, diverse audience. So hopefully when I'm talking to the adult kids, the grown-ups, you'll understand that I'm talking to them. But then young kids, I want you to be interacting with your parents at home or your grandparents and chiming in and asking questions so that maybe they can type it into the Q&A as well, so you can get your questions answered and participate. So the first thing I want to talk about is the kitchen is such an amazing place to teach and to learn, both when you're a young kid as when you're an adult as well. And I just want to give you some ideas of how you can start at a really young age getting kids connected with healthy foods. And these two items right here, Eating the Alphabet is a book that I love to give, as well as this little fun, it's like stuffed fuzzy toys that are in, vegetables. And I love giving these two gifts as like new baby gifts. Or so grandparents, if you have, you know, one of your kids you're gonna have your first grandkids and that kind of thing, these are wonderful gifts to give because it starts introducing healthy foods. They get familiar with them at a very young age. And then there's things like this that you can do with kids. And kids, I think it would be fun, as you're eating throughout the day, you could have this up on your fridge or in your room. And whenever you're eating some of these foods, you could mark off what you've been eating throughout the day. Or if you have a birthday party, it's a fun way to play bingo. So, again, making foods, healthy foods, our vegetables and our fruits and our beans and our whole grains, any way that you can get them to be familiar to kids, I think it's really important. And then here's a picture of my oldest daughter, Megan. When we lived in Flagstaff, she actually wanted to grow a garden in our backyard. Now in Flagstaff, there are people, master gardeners up there, but I will have to say she really was wonderful and made the effort. And here's some peas I think that she grew. We didn't grow a garden every year because it was a lot of effort for what we produced, but she did a wonderful job and she was curious about food. And so we let her do that. So any opportunity you have to have kids take ownership of their food choices, do it. Let's see here. The next screen, or the next slide I want to show you is how we also incorporated it through food choices in celebrations, in holiday times, at birthdays. One of the best birthday parties I ever hosted as a parent was when we did a cooking birthday party for Corinne, my youngest. And we had them in stations, the kids participated, and my daughter Corinne helped me design the menu, and then they all participated in making the food. And so that's a really exciting way to make food fun. Another thing is to be creative in the kitchen, is you can play things, and right now when we are kind of limited on how often we can go to the grocery store, you can play games like the version of Chopped from the Food Channel or Top Chef. You could experiment with a new ingredient. When you take your youngsters maybe to the grocery store, have them pick out something out of the produce aisle that you've never cooked with before or never tasted before, like dragon fruit or persimmons or something like that. Have them explore the foods and the food aisles. And then, you know, play music, have it be fun, have it be a fun experience, an auditory experience as well. And then try different spices and cooking techniques. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing a little bit today, is learning about perhaps a different cooking technique of how to make something. And then presentation. Don't you love when you go to a restaurant and it's beautiful what's put down in front of you? Make that effort too when you're serving your food at home. You can play restaurant. You can have, you know, kids, you can make up the menu. You can color the menu. You can be the server. You can be the cook. You can, you know, present the meal beautifully like you would in a restaurant. So play restaurant at home, play grocery store at home, play farmer's market. Those kind of things are wonderful. All right, so this is an example of my daughter Corinne. When she actually got older, she wanted a bento box. And we got her a bento box and some bamboo utensils. And this is really wonderful for Mother Earth as well, since we aren't throwing away constantly plastic bags and that kind of thing, and plastic silverware. You can present your food and you can have at lunchtime beautiful presentations at lunch. All right, so those are just some ideas I wanted to share with you before we got into the cooking demo part. So are we ready? Are we ready to go into the cooking demo part? Yes, I bet I see everyone's shouting. This is an odd format for me because I usually have people participating in class and they're like right out in front of me. So I am pretending you are all shouting, yes, yes, it's time to do the cooking demo. So I'm gonna switch over here. And you're not going to have the recipe in front of you because I want you to pay attention to what I'm actually doing. Now remember, you will be getting the recipes, and if you want them right now, you can actually go to my website at plant-2platter.com. So plant-2platter.com and click on the recipes, and you'll find these two recipes right at the top. And what we're going to be making today is a sweet hummus. We're going to be making a Snickerdoodle hummus. Have you ever heard the word Snickerdoodle? I think it's just a marvelous word. It makes me laugh every time I hear it. But it's based upon, if you've ever had a Snickerdoodle cookie, and that is really a cinnamon sugar, buttery kind of base cookie. Well, it's not the healthiest thing for you, but we can make it have the same taste, but make more nutritious ingredients. So what we're going to be doing is we start the Snickerdoodle cookie with first soaking some dates. And dates come from the date palm tree, and they typically are dried like this. And if you don't have dates, you could use raisins. We're going to use 2 dates, and actually I'm using 3 because these are pretty tiny Deglet Nor dates. You could use 5 tablespoons of raisins, but you first want to plump them up. And by that, we are introducing moisture back into the dried fruit, and we are going to make it so that when we combine it in this food processor, it will combine and get really nice and smooth. So I'm just using my hands, and I am putting the dates in with 1.5 cups of low sodium chickpeas. I love that name too, chickpeas. And these chickpeas are typically in a traditional hummus. A traditional hummus, you might have it with pita bread or carrot sticks. Traditional hummus is savory, and savory is kind of the opposite of sweet. Savory is like a little bit salty, a little bit spicy perhaps, and you might find it in like a Greek restaurant or in a restaurant that serves hummus. But we're going to make it sweet. And so we're still using chickpeas, but we're going to be making it sweet with our dates. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And maple syrup, I'm going to pretend I'm smelling it. I love the smell and taste of maple syrup. This is a memory, a childhood memory for me, because I grew up back on the East Coast when I was really young. And we would go to Vermont sometimes, and we would go and get fresh maple syrup. And that's what I recommend, is getting pure maple syrup versus that pancake maple syrup like that you find like in plastic containers. that's kind of not really, it's usually a lot of sugar and maple extract and water that kind of makes that up. You want pure maple syrup for that robust maple flavor. So these are our natural sweeteners. And by that meaning we're not using white sugar, which isn't so good for us. With dates, you actually get some nutrients. You get some wonderful things to keep your body healthy. You get a little bit of protein, you get fiber, you get iron, you get some magnesium. So some of these nutrients that really keep our bodies healthy and well. The next ingredient we're going to have is peanut butter. Most kids love peanut butter. Now I understand some might be allergic. So if they're allergic to peanut butter, they could definitely use almond butter, or if they're allergic to all butter, or excuse me, all nuts, you could use like sunflower seeds in this recipe. So in goes the peanut butter, and this is going to give us the rich, kind of nutty, buttery taste that a Snickerdoodle cookie would have. We are also going to add an element of liquid here, and this is just a plant-based milk. This is an unsweetened soy milk, and you could use any plant-based milk that you would like. It could be almond milk, but I would go for keeping it, in this it's not so bad if you use a sweetened milk, but it's not necessary. If you have sweetened like vanilla soy milk, you could use that in here, but just understand it's going to maybe make it a little bit maybe too sweet. So that's just why I recommend having it using unsweetened. We're going to then add, that was 3 tablespoons of plant-based milk. We're going to add 2.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And this is going to give a wonderful flavor to our Snickerdoodle hummus. And if you wanted to try and mix things up once you tried it this way, you could add different types of extract, such as an almond flavoring or maple flavoring to change up the flavor component. And then, of course, we must, if we're making Snickerdoodle hummus, we have to have cinnamon. So we're going to add in 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. And I'm telling you right now, it smells great with everything here. We kind of need scratch and sniff and taste webinars, video conferencing. So now I'm gonna whirl it in my food processor, so hopefully it's not too loud. And what I like to do at this point is take my spatula and just kind of tap it down, because I want to make sure all the components get really pulverized in here. And if you needed to add, if you like your hummus to be thinner and not super thick, I tend to like it thicker. You can always add some of that water that's reserved from your dates, or add a little bit more plant-based milk. It's really up to you. All right, so it's done. Our hummus is all done. And now what I'm going to do is show you how you can use this hummus in different ways, because I'm all about making something once and using it in all sorts of different ways. So let me just swap out and move my food processor and get my examples for you. All right, so what I have here is actually, I decided I was gonna make something maybe for breakfast. And this is a fun kind of kid take on a breakfast PB&J. And what I did is earlier in the week, I had made some French toast. And then I used some of the hummus that we just made, the Snickerdoodle hummus. And I layered it with some wild blueberry jelly. And I would just say, as a parent or grandparent, if you're going to use jelly, get a jelly that doesn't have a lot of added sugar. This is just naturally sweetened, the blueberries and some apple juice, and that's why I like to use that as an example. Another thing you can do, and let me just show you, I'll give it a bit of my hummus I just made. There it is. I'm walking all around my kitchen like, where did I put it? And it was right in front of me. For an afternoon snack, so this was kind of like breakfast perhaps. An afternoon snack, maybe you would use some roasted or baked sweet potato wedges, and then you could just dip into your Snickerdoodle hummus. You could use fresh fruit, you could use carrots. There's all sorts of ways that you can actually use this Snickerdoodle hummus. And you see how you can kind of make it your own and mix and match and do different things with it? Another idea, and this isn't just for kids. I like this, doing something like this where I bake a sweet potato. This is raw right now. This is a sweet potato. But I would roast it, and then I would crack it open. And then I would put some of the hummus right in the center, and then maybe I would top it with some blueberries. And that could be breakfast. Have you ever heard of people eating beans for breakfast? It's actually very common around the world. And so it's one way to get a lot of wonderful protein and fiber and give you energy to get you from breakfast to lunch. So I'm going to move this over. And I'm going to just check real quick on my Q&A. Just a moment. How do I make my French toast? Okay, while I am getting my next demo ready, I will answer that for you. Hold on just a moment. So I usually let my French toast, I'll talk as I'm moving stuff. I had made a huge pot of chickpeas, and I had chickpea water left over. And then what I did with my chickpea water is I dunked, you can make it savory or sweet, whichever kind of French toast you're making. I actually made it, earlier in the week, I made it a savory chickpea, or excuse me, French toast. And so in the chickpea water, which is really pretty thick, it's like eggy-like, I added a little bit of spices to that. And I just dipped my bread into that liquid and used a frying pan, a non-stick frying pan, which I'll actually go get because I'm going to use that to demonstrate this next recipe. So I have something like this that I use so that I don't have to use oil. And if I want to get something crisp, I can do that. So that's how I made my French toast, was just some older bread dipped into my garbanzo bean chickpea liquid that had some spices, and then fried it up in this. All right, the next recipe is what I call my pizza packages. And I'm going to assume everyone's had a personal size pizza before. We know we've all had regular size pizzas, and everyone from kids to adults like pizzas. The problem with personal size pizzas is if you're trying to pack them for lunch, or you're trying to, you know, not be, then be real sloppy, you want something portable, you have a problem with that. So I decided to make something that you can wrap up and transfer in your lunchbox, or that kids like to eat because it's dunkable. And so we're going to make what's called a pizza package. And again, that right now, if you want to go to plant-centric.com and get the recipe right now, you can find it there under the recipe section right at the top. So let me get one other ingredient. All right. The first thing that you will want to do is get a can of butter beans. And butter beans are really kind of a smaller version of lima beans typically, and they are white. And you will see right here that they can be rather large. Some in here are kind of tiny, but butter beans actually are squishable. And that's what I think kids really like. Okay, if you see, it squishes almost into a butter type consistency. It looks a little bit like butter. And you're gonna see me here right now. This is why kids, I think, will like this recipe, is you get your hands into the bowl and you are gonna squish and mash. And so kids like to learn, especially young kids, they like to use their hands. They like to obviously eat with their hands, and we as adults try to correct them and try to teach them to use utensils, but it's a learning experience, tactile, and we have people that are kinesthetic learners, meaning they like to feel touch. That's how they learn, sometimes better than visually or through hearing, auditory. So get your kids, and what you want to do, butter beans actually become the consistency of like Play-Doh. If you see this, it's like Play-Doh. And so if you actually wanted to color your food a little bit with some natural coloring like beet juice or with some food coloring a little bit, you could actually have fun and make things out of butter beans and be creative with whatever you want to put the butter beans in. That's an idea. So what you do is you mush it into this kind of ball. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to real quickly wash my hands. Is instead of a typical traditional pizza crust, we are actually going to use a whole grain tortilla. And what you're going to do, and I want to make sure everyone can see this well, I'm going to move this out of the way so you can really see what I'm doing, is you're going to take about 1/5 of your butter bean mixture and you're going to press it down. So it's like a square. Sometimes it turns into a rectangle, but we're trying to go for a square about 3 by 3, 4 by 4, I guess you would call it, because that will allow you to know where to put all the other ingredients, okay? So kids, this is where if you become ownership of whatever goes into your pizza package. You can, as a family, you can prepare all sorts of different ingredients, and then you all make your own pizza package. And what you do then is put about 1 tablespoon to 1.5 tablespoons of the pizza sauce right there on top. Now I'm going to add some fixings, and I chose some green pepper, but it could be red or yellow. We're adding some wonderful, we're going to kind of create rainbows when we eat. We want to have rainbows on our plate. So they give us different nutrients. And so you could have red or yellow bell pepper. And then I'm going to take some squash. And one thing, parents, that I do want to show you is kids can start learning how to use tools in the kitchen from a pretty young age, but you want to have safety be a factor. And this is actually a tool I've used in my plant-to-platter kitchen when I'm teaching young kids. It won't cut them, but it will cut through certain types of vegetables like fruits. So, things like strawberries. This is what I use to cut actually the squash and everything here. I used this tool, and you can get these online, as well as if they are starting to graduate using a regular knife or you really want to protect them, you can get protective gloves like this, and they hold it in the receiving hand and then the dominant hand that they're cutting with. Then you know that they are not going to be hurting themselves. So this I really highly recommend, because you then won't have fear of letting your kids starting to cut with knives in the kitchen. And I wish I had known about that. I don't know if they even had it when my kids were young. So I just want to give you that as a tip. Now I'm going to put my squash on. I am going to I suggest using baby spinach. It's not as potent as something, or as bitter maybe as kale, but kale is what I have in our house right now. And then I'm going to top it with some black olives. All right. Now the technique is this. You're going to fold in the two opposing sides like that. And then you're going to fold again the other two sides. And now, do you understand why we had the beans be our base of that square? We are going to adhere it with a Q-tip, or Q-tip, sorry, a toothpick. We don't want a Q-tip in our food, a toothpick. And then this is what I do over kind of medium-high heat. And this is where, if you are not an older kid, you'll need some parent help or grandparent help. And you're going to put this on like medium-high heat, and you're going to flip it every couple minutes for about 8 to 10 minutes until it becomes toasted. All right? It becomes nice and crispy and toasted. And then you take out the toothpick and it stays put. Do you see how it stays put? And this is super transportable. And so you can actually put this in your bento box, if you have a bento box for lunch, along with some of your sauce and your carrots and celery. You can use some of these bees wraps, and it could wrap up and take easily to lunch or work. And it's super tasty, and it's super simple, and you can make it the night before and have it ready for lunches. You can make it for snacks after school. It's just something that I think a lot of people will love, and it's super easy to make, and it gives everyone in the family ownership over their food and being able to make their own food choices, how they want it. Another thing is, you don't have to make it pizza style. You can make it Mexican style too, and call it maybe a bean bundle. You could go like, black beans and more, have salsa instead of pizza sauce. There's all sorts of different ways to make this particular recipe your own. So let me just flip back here so you can see me. And I want to see if I have some other questions here. Let's see. Is the hummus recipe up on your site as well? Yes, it is. It's up there. It's called Snickerdoodle hummus. And now I have to say, I meant to say this early on, that the Snickerdoodle hummus recipe is actually not a recipe of my own. I give credit to Lyndsay Nixon, who is the Happy Herbivore. She has her a website, and she came out with this recipe recently in a new book called Your Body in Balance by Dr. Neil Barnard of the Physicians Committee. And so that recipe I got out of there, but I thought she has it kind of geared towards adults, and I thought Snickerdoodle hummus, I got to show different ways that parents and grandparents and kids can make a sweet hummus. So thanks, Tiffany, for that question. Have you tried baking the pizza pockets to keep for lunches? I love, you love this recipe, great. I was thinking about that. I have not tried. This is a recipe I kind of created just for this class, to be honest with you. And so I used it, I wanted to make it at lunchtime for my husband and I, and so I used my pan. But I was thinking this morning, you could easily do it in the oven. You would just probably set your oven temperature maybe around, I don't know, 350, 375, and just check on it periodically and turn it over, and you'd get that nice crispy outside as well. All right. Any other questions at this point? Doesn't look like it. Oh, you love the tripods on the back holding my colorful posters. Are those mini tripods? They are. They actually extend really big. But I'm glad you brought up the posters in the back, because I teach a lot of different types of classes, customized classes. This is like one of my own plant platter class, but I teach also food for life classes on behalf of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, their curriculum. And these are two posters that highlight a lot of what I teach in all my classes, but in regards to Food for Life classes, how we should design our plate. So kids, what you want to try to do, and parents and adults, everybody, should really be trying to focus their plate so that they are getting some really whole natural foods that come from the families of, our vegetables, our fruits, our legumes, and our whole grains. And that gives our bodies allows us to grow big and strong, help us fight off disease, and it's really good for us. And then that's the power plate over there. And then over here's the nutrition rainbow. And that just talks about, like I mentioned in class, there are so many wonderful vitamins and minerals and powerful super disease fighting qualities called antioxidants that are found in our plant foods. And we want to make sure we're getting a lot of those just throughout the day. It doesn't have to be a certain amount. Just go for variety. Go for the rainbow and make every dish that you make, try to make it colorful and beautiful, like I was showing with the examples of the breakfast and lunch foods. Let me look. There's some other questions here. Let's see. Oh, where do I usually get the vegetable toys? Those, I found it on Amazon, and I might be able to find the link again, but I just kind of, I query on Amazon. It was a couple of years ago that I found this particular group of toys, the book, and that little crate of, it's called, I forget what it's called exactly, but it's like organic veggie crate or something like that. And I just kind of have that in my saved thing for when I give gifts for new young families. I just think it's wonderful. And how long will the hummus keep in the fridge? That's a good question. It's bean-based, so I really try to use it up if it stays in the fridge within about 5 days. I tend to not go towards 7 if possible. You can freeze it. It might change the texture a little bit, but not a whole lot. So you can freeze it if you make a large quantity and you want to freeze part of it, you could do that as well. All right, let me click off some of these here. Okay, I've gotten through those questions. All right. Does anyone have any questions for growing up in transitioning? We didn't always as a family used to eat a plant-based diet. And we slowly kind of transitioned for health reasons because of me, and I was the cook of the home. And so my family kind of came along for the ride. I'm very glad they did. And so do you want to find out from either of my daughters, Megan or Corinne, do you have any questions for them growing up in a household, or if they like to cook or not like to cook, or how they cook? You are welcome to ask those questions as well. Okay, what sparked my transition? Okay, very good question. I loved to cook. I started out when I was first married. I didn't know how to cook. I cooked terribly, actually. I cooked hamburger helper, macaroni, cheese, and hot dogs. That was the type of cook I was. I didn't have someone that taught me to cook until later on. As I became a parent, I realized, hey, I'm not just eating food for myself. I'm feeding a family, and I should be trying to eat more healthfully. But really, so I started getting a little bit better, and I taught myself how to cook, and I had a wonderful sister-in-law who taught me. I watched America's Test Kitchen. And then I started having health issues and things that were signaling to me. I was having pain and just a variety of symptoms. I don't want to go into great detail, but sometimes that's the indicator. That's our body telling us that something might be wrong. If our blood work's coming back wrong, if we're starting to have pain, we might want to listen and say, maybe look at what's on our plate. And that's what I did. And so I started going to some different doctors, and attended some nutrition education conferences, and just started realizing and reading some books and that kind of thing, that what I was putting on my plate was maybe not the best thing to do. And so I transitioned slowly over a period of time, and then became fully plant-based, and then my health issues went away. So I'm very thankful for that. All right. There is a person, Megan, did you find it difficult, and Corinne, you can answer this too. Did you find it difficult as a teen eating healthy when around friends? Megan, can you unmute yourself, or do you need me to do it?
I got it.
Okay.
I would say it was, for me personally, it was actually a little bit more difficult going off to like the college scene, and having a more mindful aspect about how I ate, just because you'd be around a lot of people or parties with lots of chips and soda and all that kind of stuff, and it felt a little bit more left out. But at the same time, I respect where we came from and really appreciated what we ate. And when I would show up to those areas with like a veggie platter, it was amazing how much people actually wanted that at the parties rather than all the chips and the unhealthy food too. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
Corinne, do you have any input for that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. I'm actually the opposite of Megan. In high school, I would definitely be a little bit made fun of for the foods I would choose. And I was kind of known for having like all the vegetables in my lunch. And in college, it was a lot easier just because of the program that I was in. I studied nutrition. So everyone that I went to school with ate pretty much the same I did. So I didn't really find it challenging there. But in terms of transition, I think just explaining and being very open about why you choose the foods you do is kind of a great way to answer people's questions, or if they're curious, or if they have any sort of, input on what you're eating, because a lot of times people will comment. So that's kind of from my perspective on things.
Right. And then were you both open to a new lifestyle, or a bit hesitant in the beginning? Well, yeah, how did, I'll start, I guess we'll go from oldest to youngest again. Megan, how was it for you transitioning to a different way of eating?
I'm trying to remember, to be honest. It was very seamless. And I wanted to also comment, I think what's interesting about Corinne and myself, our answer to the last question is, those were the times in our life, I think, when the transition really impacted us the most, or like we've noticed the most change. I was early in college, Corinne was still in high school. So it's interesting to me that that's kind of when we both started to recognize differences in how we ate versus everyone else, and how everyone else also recognized the differences. But for me, the transition itself, I don't remember it being negative. I don't remember it being weird. I just remember being like, oh, there's new food. Oh, it tastes good. Okay, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, and Corinne might have, Corinne and I kind of did it together, right, Corinne?
Yeah, we made the choice, I would say, simultaneously. Sorry, I cannot say that word. But at the same time, I think for very similar reasons. And I guess looking back, I was pretty young to make that choice. I feel like I was pretty young to make that choice. So it seems like it's just kind of a natural progression with introducing more of a plant-based diet at that time. I think also what helped is our family's always been very experimental with food. So it just felt like another day in the life of just trying something new. I would definitely say trying to always be creative in the kitchen and not fearing foods, and especially having parents that were willing to try new foods. It made me want to try new foods. And I think that's the biggest thing with children is they learn from the people they look up to. So if you're experimental and you're trying those foods, they're much more open to doing the same thing.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. And that was something I also thought about bringing up is, foods should not be something that you should be, like you said, fearful of. And it should be really just eye-opening. Just all the different types of foods that are out there, the different types of cuisines, the different ways you can learn about history and science and all sorts of things that you can do that come just out of the foods that we eat. So think about it. We're here, a lot of, people that are in attendance here are working for the healthcare industry or in education. I've noticed students I've had in the past are here, and there's new people that are attending this webinar. But it's really about, we're here kind of staying in place right now due to this coronavirus situation. It's a time that we're all together. We can bond in the kitchen. We can learn about, why does an onion give off this weird smell when we cut it open? And what is that sulfur? What does it mean? What does it do? That's kind of a science nerdy thing to do. Or be, like I said, just creative, and you can be working on counting skills. And when you look at a recipe and working out fractions, if we're going to double the recipe, what does that mean if we have a half cup plus a half cup here? What does it become? I mean, there's all sorts of math, science, history, everything that revolves around food. So you, as a person, as an adult, as well as a kid, there is a lot of fun that you can have in the kitchen. Let's see. I have a question here. The Snickerdoodle hummus could it work as a frosting? We're always looking for ideas for plant-based frostings. It might, depending on, I think it might be able to. You would have to play with it a little bit. You might need to sweeten it up maybe a little bit more to make it more frosting-like. I think it would work well on individual cupcakes. I don't know how it would work on it, like doing an entire cake, but that's what experimenting with food and having fun with food is all about, is being creative like that and see how will something work. And that's one of the things I have to tell you, my family, we had a lot of bombs. You can fail in the kitchen too. You can have things that don't taste too good, but that's the part of learning, and that's okay. You learn from those mistakes, just like with anything in life. So I would be curious to know if you try that as a frosting, if it works. I'd love to hear about that. What would be the best way to begin to transition teens? Megan and Corinne, we have maybe just another minute or two. I'm willing to stay as long as people want, but the class goes 45 minutes, so if you do have to tune out, you can. But I want to answer maybe this question, then I want to wrap up with just a statement, and then we'll answer some more questions. What would be the best way to begin to transition teens? Do you have any suggestions, Megan and Corinne?
I guess I would just keep providing the option. I think that's key. And I'm also thinking a little bit about how I've influenced my husband as well. That he didn't have the most adventurous palate to begin with, but now he eats all sorts of fruits and vegetables and all sorts of things. So, and it's really been like, well, I'm going to try this. Here, you want a bite? Or just providing the option. And I think that has worked well.
Right. Corinne?
Yeah, I agree with Megan. And I also think with the teen, kind of that age range, they really want to make their own choices. So if you give them the option of like, what would you like to do? What are some things, some foods you'd like to try that we can experiment with? It gives them that sense of independency. So I think that's a really great way to go as well, and kind of get them involved in making their own choices to transition, so that they feel like they have a sense of control and a sense of like independency at the end of the day. So
right. Yeah, and I would have to definitely agree with both of those things. And I think, as a family, we would also sometimes get together and cook in the kitchen. That was one of our family bonding times. And so I would encourage folks to try that as well, and give people in your family, give them, what do you want for, maybe plan a menu, have your teenagers decide what they would like the family to eat, and give the reasonings behind it. And so again, giving them choice and participating in the family meal to give them a little bit of control and a little bit of, so they're not feeling like they're the ones being told what to do and what to eat. So do it by example. I do want to, since we are at the end of the class time, feel free if you have any other questions, let me know. And thanks for the nice comments I received from people. Thank you. I do want to let you know this is Earth Month. We're in the month of April, and I am giving these classes. I have a series of 3. Like I said, I have one more that'll be on April 19th. But I'm doing this free because it gives me purpose while I'm stuck in my home. It allows me to teach, since all my classes throughout the community and within my home got canceled. So it's a way for me to have a sense of purpose, and I think we all need that. But what I would like you to do is think of, is it, a kid or the parent or as a family, what's a way that you can give back and pay it forward, whether it's in regards to Earth Month or it's in regards to the situation that we are now experiencing as an entire world with the coronavirus. Maybe it's, donating to a food bank or helping out, taking some food to a food bank. Maybe it's just within your own family structure, doing a random act of kindness. So if your mom or dad are prepared a meal, maybe you offer without being asked to clean up afterwards, or you set the table without being asked, or you decide as a family to do some random act of kindness. Pick up the phone and call your grandparents, draw them a picture of wonderful food, whatever it is. That's how I would like to be thanked for providing this class, because if we all pay it forward, it just has this wonderful ripple effect. I will be sending out, like I said, that class email. And if you have problems getting any sort of emails from me in the future, if you gave me a business email address, like a company, like a healthcare provider or a school, know that sometimes that firewall within your company blocks Platter from getting to you. So you may want to send me an email with a personal email address if you would like to receive something from me on a monthly basis. Otherwise, you may not get it after these Zoom webinars are over with. So just so you know that. And let me see if there's anything else. Nope, I think that's it. So I'm going to wrap up. I don't have any other questions, but if you think of something, feel free to email me. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me into your home or workplace. And I hope to see you at my next class on Sunday, April 19th, called Simply Scrumptious Sauce. Have a good day. Stay healthy. Stay safe.